Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 4th Planning Commission meeting. It is 6:05 p.m. I will call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum tonight, I believe with 100% attendance. No, we're missing one. That's why I'm up here. Duh, Jamie. But we do have a quorum. Thank you, Ms. Jaco. Do we have any registered public comments? Great, thank you so much. Can I get an approval of the minutes for the January 21st Planning Commission meeting? Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? If so, can I get a motion?
So
For
moved.
approval.
Second.
So enthusiastic this evening. That's a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco, please call the roll.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Prince.
Aye.
Mr. Rollins.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Vice Chair Averwater.
Aye, thank you so much. And before we get started, I would like to recognize Dr. Cody from our neighbor MTSU, just a few blocks down, and his students that are here this evening. Okay, students, can you raise your hand? Let us see you. Oh, wow, you have quite a few here. Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us. I hope this evening isn't too long. I'm sure you have lots of studying to do, right? Shake your head. Good. Good. All right. Thank y'all for joining us. Good luck. All right, we have a mandatory referral to consider the abandonment of a portion of Airport Road right-of-way. City of Murfreesboro Municipal Airport is the applicant. Mr. Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Chair Averwater?
Fantastic.
But good evening, members of the Planning Commission. In this mandatory referral, the Planning Commission is being asked to consider the abandonment of a portion of the southeast corner right-of-way at the corner of Airport Road and Memorial Boulevard. The purpose of this mandatory referral is so that the airport can erect a sign directing people to the airport on this area. We did receive comments from utility providers and departments who all generally are okay with this application. Some will require an easement at the area, but outside of that, staff recommends forwarding approval to the city council, subject to all staff comments.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Anthony regarding this application for the sign?
No.
No? Okay. If none, we will hold the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. All right, I will open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to come forward and speak about this exciting signage for the airport, speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, with that, we will close the public hearing and we will discuss any other matters, or I will have a vote.
Move for approval, subject to staff comments.
Second.
Fantastic. Motion and a second. Ms. Jaco, please call the roll.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Prince.
Aye.
Mr. Rollins.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Vice Chair Averwater.
Aye. Thank you so much. Next up, item 5B of our agenda, the annexation petition and plan of services for approximately 93.6 acres located along Manchester Pike, including approximately 3,150 linear feet of Manchester Pike right-of-way. Jennifer Workman, James and Gail Lewis, and Kenneth and Sharon Wilson are the applicants. Ms. Smith, hello.
Hello, good evening, Chair and Planning Commission. As you can see on the attached aerial, it shows the 4 parcels that are involved in the annexation request. These are the 4 private property areas, and then the Manchester Pike section is this section right here, because city limits actually already exists along Manchester Pike directly in front of this project area, as well as to the south. That particular area along Manchester Pike involves about 3,150 linear feet. In our major transportation plan, we actually show that as a future 5-lane roadway. I don't know in the past whether I covered that or not. When it gets south of Joby Jackson, then it goes to a 3-lane roadway at that particular segment. And then this particular area, we did send a request to TDOT, and TDOT has filed a consent in writing that they're not opposed to that acquisition into our jurisdiction, but as was discussed last time, any future maintenance, there is a TDOT agreement that actually pays the city offsetting funds to be able to maintain those state routes. In looking at our plan of services for this area, we did, of course, send out to all of our normal utility providers along this area. Surrounding uses are generally light industrial to really 3 major sides of the property. Multifamily to the north that's currently under construction. This area that is currently not in the city limits, but we are going to be seeing some future annexation requests in that area. And then, of course, the PRD on the opposite side of Manchester Pike. As we're looking at the surrounding uses, again, that residential across the highway is a PRD, which is single-family detached. The multifamily to the north is 315 units of multifamily, started construction last year. And then, of course, the Prologis property along Elam Farms Parkway, and then the existing industrial as well. Tax revenues, this just breaks out some assessments based on current valuations, what we might see from the site. And looking at all of the different service providers, the 2 main ones that were of consequence were, of course, sewer. On the sewer side of things, as you're looking at this particular map, the blue area represents that annexation area. City has a force main that actually comes down this section. You can't directly tie into a force main, so basically the property owner will have to tie in at this point. Part of the project for the apartments is they're already putting in or have already put on order their pump station that goes with that. So this particular project has started to coordinate with them. They may have to put in additional pumps to get additional capacity, and that will be one of the constraints for their project site, will be depending upon that, because it is limited based on some of those adjacent uses. This is actually in CUD territory, and here we would just need to make sure that the fire flows are going to be adequate as development does come down the pipe. As far as fire stations, we do have a fire station within 4.2 miles. It's a little bit further than the next closest one, but this is the one that would actually provide services to that area. Currently, we are already providing those services to this planned development on the opposite side of Manchester Pike, so they did not see any problems. This area is not in any floodways. And then from a circulation standpoint, one of the things that was covered in the staff report is there is a condition that has been requested to be included as part of not necessarily the annexation, but it will affect the entirety of the project. And for us, the biggest connection point is Elam Farms Parkway currently dead ends at about Distribution Drive. And so where it dead ends, here we go. The current street has a temporary turnaround at this location. The new project adjacent looks at flattening this curve slightly. Bad drawing, but gives you a rough idea. That involves some of that property that they do not own. That is actually owned by Prologis. They have already had conversations with them. They seem open to allowing for that, but in the staff comments is having a signed agreement with Prologis to dedicate a small portion, that little wedge, for Elam Farms Parkway to the city, to be executed and recorded in a form that's acceptable to city legal. We don't see these things happen very often, but without that, the project as it's proposed could not move forward because it would basically take out a lot of the building area. And so we do want to make sure that that is included. And then, of course, any extension of roadways to access their site and sewer would all be the responsibility of the applicant. So this is a notice public hearing. All of the plan of services have been distributed. The site has been posted for the public hearing request, and the applicant is here should you have any questions on the annexation. And then separately, after this item, we'll discuss their PID simultaneous request for a zoning for the property as well.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
All right. Anything on the annexation, planning commission? Okay. Fantastic. All right. I will preface our public comments by saying that this first petition, or this first item is for the annexation petition. So that just means that the applicant is applying to annex it into the city of Murfreesboro. So we will have a public hearing for that. The Planning Commission, this body, will vote on that. And then Ms. Smith will come back up and we will discuss the zoning for this property. So the first one's the annexation, the second one is the zoning. After Ms. Smith speaks about the zoning and the uses or the proposed uses of this property, there will be another public hearing. So you're welcome to speak at both. You certainly do not have to speak at both, but it's more common to speak at the zoning than at the annexation, but of course we welcome all comments. If any of our MTSU students feel passionately about this, they can stand up and maybe earn some extra credit from Dr. Cody back there. See what I did there? You're welcome, students. All righty. So with that, we will open the public hearing for the annexation. Anyone who wishes to speak on the annexation, please come forward. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and we will have further discussion and possibly a vote on the annexation. Planning Commission? If there's no discussion, then I will welcome a motion.
Move for approval, subject to staff comments.
Okay. Motion and a second. Ms. Jaco, please call the roll.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Prince.
Aye.
Mr. Rollins.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Vice Chair Overwater.
Aye. All right. Motion passes for the annexation. Ms. Smith, if you will speak to us about the zoning application for approximately 87.7 acres located along Manchester Pike to be zoned PID simultaneous with that annexation. Scannell Properties is the applicant. Ms. Smith.
Thank you again, Commission. As was mentioned, we gave a little bit of an overview with the annexation, but usually this is the time that staff will go into a little bit of our zoning and general plan. Some areas that basically the developer won't go over, and we did hand out, everybody should have a double-sided copy of their proposed use table. We tried to get it as clean as possible by the time it went to publication. Staff literally hot off the press this morning. We appreciate all the hard work of the applicant getting this in a form that we can go ahead and further discuss for you and have all of the information necessary for you to dialogue on it. So as you can see in this particular area, the proposed site is actually currently in the county. This particular portion of the site is zoned PUD, and it's approved for a winery in its current phase. The back portions here, the other parcels, are all zoned RM, which is residential medium density, both in the county sides. Now, what's good about the existing conditions map is it kind of mixes and matches the county's designations and the city's designations on this first table. So, for example, when we're looking at, zoom in a little bit, there we go. So when you're looking at the adjacent zoning or land uses in the county, this is that medium density residential. Should that piece ever come in the future, it's designated as neighborhood commercial. The existing, of course, residential, this is known as Manchester Farms Apartments, is under construction. It is multifamily in our general plan. In the county, again, these pieces right across the street from the project are actually zoned in the county, CN and CS, which are both commercial uses. For the city, if it were to come in the general plan, a portion shows it as neighbor commercial and a portion as single-family residential. A small one parcel here designated as RM. Again, it's part of that SR. The existing planned development here that is in city limits. And then to the south, these RM designated pieces in the county, which our general plan designation shows as business innovation. So this is where it gets a little bit complex, but the idea is we try to look at those future uses that the city would prefer having in our long-range development vision documents versus what the county has in, because it weighs in on how things might change or redevelop in the future. The RM16 to the due north, main thing with that is it's brand new construction, so likely It's a 50-year project at base minimum, wouldn't change any time from their original approval, whereas the other pieces may or may not develop into something else either in the county or in the city. But if they're city, they're more intense uses than a single-family residential use that you would see directly across the street. The BI, you might say, what in the world is BI? You might recall when we adopted our new land use plan, we have this new designation called business innovation. This is the very first project that we are actually utilizing that policy. So we've had to work very closely with our legal department and the applicant to try to take that vision in our land use document and determine what it actually is and how it should be implemented. And as we were looking at that, really the focus is that they have, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, is characteristics include additional environmental performance to enhance, ensure hours of activity, loading, noise levels, lighting, and the intensity of industrial uses is comparable to neighboring uses, but it's really designed for manufacturing parks, business innovation and research centers, advanced manufacturing, research and development, incubator, industrial, office space, and really the primary focus is industry and innovation, but can include commercial, park, and open space components. So that's why I went ahead and put it here, and I also put it in the staff report because it's a lot to try to understand the intent of what that is and what the city's purpose. So it took us a little bit longer to work through our use table, but as it's related to performance standards, the applicant will be going over kind of the other, I'll call it residential pieces, but I wanted to go over some of the implementations that have come into play in your surrounding projects. So directly adjacent to the project, on the left side of the project, you'll see FedEx Prologis. This is a 24/7 activity, which is probably our most intense exterior noise because a lot of the activities are going on the outsides of the building, and it's 24/7. So in that particular case, as they were moving the project forward, and this was straight zoning, they did a sound study. That sound study determined that they needed a 20-foot tall high wall. If you haven't gone there, that is our Great Wall of China, bigger than the one that you see on Joby Jackson, and it goes for 2,000 feet on their site. And you can kind of see it here in that dark, bold yellow line, which is actually the north, let me think, is it north side of, no, it's their westerly side of their property. Then to their easterly side of their property, they only needed a 12-foot sound wall in this location with that multifamily adjacent to it, and then it transitions back to a 10-foot, and really it's buffering the noise that's occurring on the outside of the building. And the city, you may not see it often enough, but in our municipal code, we have noise standards. All cities just about have noise standards, which are a certain decibel level at the property line. So this is just an example, kind of worst case scenario, what kinds of mitigations. And we also wanted to let you all know that the apartments to the north, they're actually also building a 15-foot minimum width type D buffer along their property line. And they're actually looking at potentially adding a berm to their side of the line, so the applicant will have their additional buffer landscaping on their property, and the apartments on their side of the property would also have additional landscape buffering. So I just wanted to point those out because those facts are nowhere in the staff report, but those are the kinds of things that we do look at. Very rarely do we see noise standards. I think the only other time I've seen it is for tire shops, where it's directly adjacent to residential, where we've seen 9 and 10 and 12-foot tall walls. And I think at one point the Parkway Place PID put in a 9-foot wall between their commercial and the single-family residential. In going further into the project site, the reason for the PCD being requested is to allow for industrial development that, one, has access to sewer, that's sensitive to adjacent long-term uses, and is consistent with that business innovation designation. And most importantly for us is that connection of Elam Farms Parkway. So currently its terminus is near Distribution Drive. Manchester Farms, as part of their apartment project, are building a small component of it that's touching down to Manchester Pike. This particular project is looking at a phased approach of actually constructing that, which they will be going into, I believe, during their discussion. And then, last but not least, just handed out this proposed allowable uses table. The one area that's highlighted is the one area that staff and the developer don't see eye to eye on, which is pretty good, I think, you know, all of these particular ones. And we're just down to one, but if you may recall, we only have, I believe, one other PID property in town, and that is the Parkway Place property that you did an approval on, their very last parcel, I think, last month. And so this particular one, what it looks at is really 2 development zones. So when you're looking at the properties, these 2 are known as buildings 1 and 2, and then this is building 3 and building 4. So when staff was looking at the use table with them, we thought that the uses that are here should probably be less intense than what is on these 2 pieces for 2 reasons. One, the ones on the left are smaller tenant spaces that range from 24,000 to 32,000 square feet in size, but could be smaller if they wanted to. And the ones in building 3 and 4 are much larger tenant spaces. And they're also further away from a lot of the uses with a lot of landscape buffering adjacent to them. So as the staff looked at it, and I'll just take a sneak peek like this. As one example, staff looked at our current use table. We used the current table descriptors, and then we really looked at light industrial. If something wasn't allowed in light industrial, it probably should have some limitations in that 1 and 2 area. And if it was a special use permit, we tried to avoid it altogether. But there is one use, and when you're looking at this second page, this is a little bit different than what we've seen in other properties. But in order to not have a special use permit, our legal's determination was, as a PID, BZA does not have the right to overturn the uses that the council has approved specifically for this site. So the applicant literally had to list out all the types of uses that they would anticipate, and we were trying to, in a simple fashion, because I'm a one-pager kind of gal, try to get it as succinctly as possible. So what this does is, as an example, we have all of these brewery, brew pubs, distilleries, wineries. If you go to our zoning code, it goes for about 3 or 4 pages. So what we did is we consolidated all of these categories that are tied to most of those uses, put them in this superscript note, which normally would be your end note in our chart 1. So when chart 1 looks at these little superscript notes, that's what those Roman numerals represent. And so it says those things are going to be required for that kind of project. And the biggest one for us was if it's within 250 feet of a residential use, it would not be allowed. So what we did do is we made sure that on these descriptors, like brew pub, it says parenthesis greater than 250 feet from the residential. So that may give the opportunity for the south half of those buildings 1 and 2 for those kinds of activities, because really the applicant wanted to have as many uses as possible, so they didn't get to a point of, hey, I can't tenant this building because I can't do anything with it. So staff was working very diligently to try to allow that. The other thing that we did, and what you may not realize in our industrial district, is there's this caveat description for all of our industrial, which is manufacture, storage, distribution, and fulfillment of, and then whatever those descriptors are. In most cases, the reason it's not allowed for light industrial is the manufacturing uses are usually much more intense than all the other industrial uses, and usually those would not be allowed next to even multifamily residential. So we've added this, I'll call it superscript I, and then the next page, and this is very different from how we've done it before, but it says manufacturing in this sub-I, manufacturing will be allowed if, It doesn't generate bothersome noise, vibration, odors, air pollutants to neighboring properties. So we already have noise standards and lighting standards that are much more hard and fast. Those other ones, air pollutants and odors, are a lot harder, but most of those are related to exterior ventilation and exterior storage and those kinds of things. So you'll see a lot of ease with that superscript I, and the idea is the storage, distribution, fulfillment of those uses is allowed next to those residential uses, but not manufacturing unless they can show it's not having a negative impact. Very different way of thinking of things, but it's a creative way that gives people a little bit more opportunity. And I'm just going to cover two more. Outdoor storage, because it was late in the game, and looking with our legal, probably needs some work because of how it's termed, and maybe the applicant can go a little bit more specifically, but they're looking at wanting to have some temporary storage, like somebody's moving stuff in and out of their facility, but it needs to stay on the ground for, I don't know, a week max in time. Not having any screening for that. They want to be able to do that in these districts in the truck apron, which would basically be not on where they park the cars, but where on the interior side of things on a temporary basis. And then separately, they would like to be able to, and we allow this in our city as long as Planning Commission approves it, permanent outdoor storage as long as it meets our policies. So we have a policy that's quoted out. So here it actually says, you know, per our zoning code, but those two areas, which is footnote Roman number 3 and 4 here, would be ones that we would like to work a little bit further on for our legal. And then last but not least, this 5 and 6 apply to everything. Everybody has to meet parking standards, noise standards, and lighting standards, but we wanted to make sure it was captured here. And then last but not least is this item 8 here at the bottom. We asked them to put in on these data centers. About a year and a half ago, we put in new policy, wasn't there before, after doing some looking at data centers in general and how they were working nationwide, and had a bit of concerns. And we had one, Redstone, which was under 15,000 square feet. That was a good example. We said, hey, that one seems to be working fine. It's not creating noise. It's not creating excessive water, sewer issues. But anything greater than that, we were very uncomfortable with. So currently our code says it's a special use permit only in all of our industrial districts, including heavy industrial. Because, you know, we've seen and heard of ones that are, you know, 100,000 square feet, 200,000 square feet, take up a lot of land, and seem to have a lot of negative impacts. So the applicant would like to talk about that today, but currently what they are showing and what they would like to see is fully allowed in both the areas next to the residential, directly adjacent, as well as those areas 3 and 4. And then lastly, I think we mentioned it during the annexation, the one caveat we do have with the PID and really the annexation both is having that agreement signed with Prologis, allowing for that street to slightly curve into the Prologis site before we actually finalize a second reading by the council for that. And I think that you can zoom in and show that particular area. It's very small, but it's something that's a critical path. If they don't have it, their project can't be built as they're shown. So with that, I will turn it on over to the applicant that has a PowerPoint slide of their project. Make sure I just got the right one.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
By CD. It's hard to tell the difference between the PowerPoint and the other one. It's not telling me the name. I think that's it. All right. Change the cover sheet.
Thank you all. Appreciate y'all taking the time here. I'm Chad Grass with Thomas Nutton Engineering. I do have Mr. Tom McCary here with Scannell Properties to help answer any questions directly that we may not be able to, that I may not be able to cover. Holly did such a good job that she probably took mine from 10 minutes down to about 2, but we'll try and go through this and give you enough information. So as we discussed the proposed site, we would basically starts on the west side next to the Prologis FedEx building where Elam Farms currently ends, and is the subject site that you see in red. I'm going to go a little faster through that because I think you guys fully understand. Holly covered a lot of the zoning based on the existing and the county overlay, and then obviously the land use plan that is your guys' future, and how the business / innovation fits in with what we're proposing here and what will be the land use table. So I'm going to focus more on this. This is our proposed development. It consists of 4 buildings. 2 of those, buildings 1 and 2 there on the left-hand side, are the 2 that share a truck court and would share not share docks, but share that space. And then 3 and 4 are individual buildings that could stand alone. One of the things you'll see near the end is if we do eventually decide to subdivide this, it's in red, that we do want to have it approved not to have the interior, the buffers on those lot lines that we provide at that time, that it is the development is what we are buffering and not necessarily these interior buildings. The main thing, and I'll zoom in here, but not that button. I don't know how to zoom in on this. I was going to... Oh, there we go. Not that one. Sorry. Apologize.
Holly, can you show him how to take that circle off?
Yeah, it's up there, ain't it?
Almost.
Here we go. Right here is what Holly was referring to as how we're going to start the curve, and currently Elam Farms Parkway goes straight. And basically given some of the wetland constraints that are on the property, it made a lot more sense to start diverging that road quicker. That is, we're actually doing the survey work, out the survey for it right now. That seems to be going pretty smooth with Prologis. Fortunately, our client has a real good relationship with them, so we don't see any hiccups coming up at this time, but as Holly mentioned, we will have that by the time the council votes on it. The intention on Elam Farms Parkway is to have a 3-lane road, very similar to what the existing Elam Farms Parkway is. So the center lane is the left turn lanes. Now we got to zoom back out. And the overall development at the end, we'll get to the phasing on the next one, would be basically finish the connection between the Manchester Pike and Joe B. Jackson. Move on. This mouse is sensitive.
And fast.
So we're looking at a 3-phase project. The first building 1 and 2 would be phase 1, and we would stop that parkway extension basically right here for phase 1 and provide a turnaround. And then phase 2 will continue it on and connect to where it currently ends at the apartment complex there. Then phase 3 will be the last phase and is at the south end of the property. No. Bear with. Landscape and buffering. So overall, it's our developer's goal to obviously develop the property, but also be a good steward. Majority, there's going to be 23% of the total site is left as open space, and that does not include some of the wetland areas. So there's significantly more. So there is some wetlands that we are avoiding, and that'll get into some of these buffers here in a second, but a pretty substantial amount of green space, which I think plays in well to the business innovation. That's part of the goals there, is to not have an extremely high dense development. So adjacent to the existing LI zoning, it's the traditional 15-foot buffer, and that's what's shown in yellow down these sides and through there. But the intention would be not to, sorry, I need to erase that one. We're actually not getting into that wetland. And down this side. Against the multifamily would be a type D buffer. As Holly mentioned, the multifamily also has a type D buffer, so that basically doubles that screening and vegetation there. Moving on, type E buffer is on this line and will help screen. There is an adjacent residence there. One of the things that when we laid this out, we did try to not push the building all the way up, to give a little bit of stormwater management, but also a little bit of distance, if you will. I think it's 190 feet or so off the property line before that building starts. And then you'll see it here in red. One of the things we were asking, because there is a wetland here, we are proposing to move this buffer in at the building. We would rather not get a wetland impact permit to plant bushes, so we're going to leave that alone and then plant next to the building itself. Clear it all. Oh gosh. Bear with me. This is some representation of what they want, what the buildings will eventually look like. On each end is going to be the office pods, which next sheet you'll see kind of a blow up of that core entry there for the office areas, and then also one in the middle. This will obviously get a lot more looked at during the actual site plan review process, but generally speaking, they're tilt wall Class A construction. They're not metal, nothing, that's not going to be a high end building. And then this is a little bit more what that feature looks like on the corners of those buildings. Nothing crazy color scheme, some natural colors is the intent. And then to the land use table, we can talk through any questions we got on the land use table, but I think Holly did a great job of going through that. One thing I want to hit on the data center. So we're doing a lot of data centers. There is a lot of information out there that may or may not be true. We're doing one specifically right now in Nashville that is a little over 100,000 square feet, 12 megawatt facility. Uses no water and sewer other than the people that work there. It's what we call a closed loop cooling system. That's where the power comes, or water use and sewer use comes from, is how they cool all the servers and computers inside. So that is what we would like, the flexibility, if that ever, we're not pursuing necessarily data centers, but if something came along, and as long as they use the technology to minimize water and wastewater, we'd like to have that included. And I don't know if I'll go one more here. And kind of fast forwarding to the end, basically what we're trying to do is maintain the LI zoning classes as far as setbacks and lot coverage. Nothing really changes there. We are asking for, a shorter building, maxing it out at 50 versus 75, what would be allowed in the LI zoning. But here's the two kind of general exceptions, which is the not having the requirement of the interior lot lines as buffer yards, and then moving that one type E buffer into the building and not adjacent to Manchester Pike. We do have a couple, I don't know which one it is, Holly. Yes, there it is. That we did do a couple cross sections just showing some of the distances from existing residents and or the multifamily. One of the key ones that I feel is this house right here. And there's also one, I want to scroll it up, but down here that we are trying to screen and be sensitive of. They are fairly far away, but also if I was there, I would say they're close to. But we are trying to screen them very well, is the intent. So with that, we're open to any comments, questions from the commission.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry, I know that was longer.
That's okay. We like the information.
Vice Chair Averwater, I did also just want to add that as I'm reminded as I see Mr. Matt Fasig, Assistant City Engineer, in the audience, our public infrastructure department has been very intentional about really driving home the need with the development community who's looking at investing in this area on the need for the infrastructure improvements. And so I think two of the key linkages that are in our that they've been pushing for is this Elam Farms Parkway connection, as well as the Distribution Drive connection to Elam Road. And so kind of in conjunction with this separate project, we have met with developers who are looking at developing the property to the west of the Prologis FedEx site, in which we have already made them aware that they would be expected to construct the Distribution Drive extension. And so we've been really intent on seeking those connections to help move traffic in this area.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Planning commissioners? Any comments or thoughts, or would you like me to just open the public hearing first? Okay, we can do that. Is that fine? All right, great. All right, everyone. We will start the process for the public hearing for the zoning application for this property. If you'd like to come forward and speak on the application, if you'd please first state your full name and your address and speak well into the microphone, that would be very helpful. You have 3 minutes to speak. Unless you're speaking on behalf of a homeowners association or a group, please say that. In that case, you will get 5 minutes. And I will keep a timer. Get out my handy dandy timer here. Okay, fantastic. And when your time is up, I will give you about 15 to 20 seconds to wrap up, but after that I start to get a little cranky, okay? All right, we will start the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this application, please come to the podium. I said all that and no one, okay, there we go.
You didn't even let him have a chance to stand up.
No, okay. I didn't see any indication. Hello.
Good evening. My name's Julian Mateo Crow. I'm one of the students with MTSU. Oh, microphone. I'm with the students of MTSU. And I don't really have, I guess, like anything for or against. It's just more of a question since I hadn't heard any of it discussed. I'm kind of curious about where is the outcome of annexing some more land or rezoning. How does this benefit the city of Murfreesboro? Or potentially what disadvantages come along with that, as well as how does this impact the local residents of these regions, as well as even it looked like there was going to be some development on some land. So how would this potentially affect the local ecosystem involved in these regions?
It's a great
That's
question.
all my questions.
Awesome. Okay. We collect all the questions and then we'll go over them at the end. Is there
Okay,
anything
okay.
else you wanted to ask?
Oh, that's all.
Okay, great. Do I need to negotiate your extra credit, or did we already do that?
Cody.
I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for speaking. Okay, anyone else who wishes to speak for or against, you can just come on up.
Hi, my name's Nathan Morgan. I'm also one of the students at MTSU. I was just curious about the technology used for waste capture. Is it something that has to be specifically proprietary to like one private company, or are there other alternatives that companies can use? Like, is it going to be like a government deal of some sort with some sort of corporation?
Are you referring to solid waste or?
Either or, depending on how it is. I just heard it mentioned and I didn't know the specifics.
Okay, perfect.
I'd love to know all of it. That sounds
Solid waste
interesting.
as opposed to sewer, I assume, correct?
Oh,
Like, are you asking about trash or about toilet waste?
it just said that there was a mention of water waste.
Of water waste, got it.
Was that the, oh goodness. Well,
For water
solid
runoff?
waste too.
I believe it was in the context of the data center.
Of,
the waste
oh, okay.
of data centers.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Yeah, we can cover that. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay. Next question or comments, thoughts, concerns? Going once, going twice. Okay, closed. Not going to bang that gavel for the rest of the night. Great. Okay, now the Planning Commission can discuss, and we do have some questions from our students. Number one was the benefit of annexation and zoning for the city. I could talk about that all night, but Mr. Blomley, would you like to discuss that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Vice Chair Overwater. So I think in a situation like this, the benefit primarily would be the economic benefit of the proposed uses, generating employment opportunities for the community, tax revenue for the city, and just bringing more opportunity to the city. And as far I heard him mention, how our potential detrimental impacts addressed, and I think as Ms. Smith went over, staff has been working hard to negotiate those mitigating efforts in the form of landscape buffers, making sure that the uses of the buildings that are in close proximity to the apartments that are under construction to the north are limited to uses that are less noxious than other types of industrial uses.
Right.
So those kinds of things are things that us, the staff being the first line of defense, we are always looking for ways that we can minimize those negative impacts on surrounding landowners, and then we take those plans to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission looks at it and sees if there are other things that we've missed that need to be put in place to protect those neighboring landowners. And I've heard him mention ecosystems, and I think that's a perfect segue to the plan that shows the existing wetlands to remain. This area, as are many areas in Murfreesboro, are rife with wetlands. There are federal requirements and state requirements for how wetlands can be developed around, and so as you can see, they are really choosing to preserve those wetlands rather than disturbing them and having to mitigate the disturbance in the wetlands. They are looking to basically leave the wetlands as is, and looks like about half of the site is actually being left as green space. And so the federal and state requirements really speak to what can and can't be done in those protected habitats. Did I hit?
I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. As far as data centers and the wastewater usage, I am not schooled in that topic, and so
Okay, Mr. Prince has volunteered for twice in one night. Your interesting knowledge comes in handy.
And if I could just hit on 2 points, and as I was listening, I did realize I left a couple of things out. Architecture, I very gently touched because they did include in their pattern book They will include base body cap to meet basically our standards, so we didn't get too far into it. Showing on the screen are the wetland locations, and so as you can see on the screen, they're threading the needle for the Elam Farms Parkway, and they actually will have to work with the Army Corps of Engineers as well as TDAC, so that's a federal agency and a state agency, and they're kind of the purveyors of what they'll allow wetlands to be lost or not. And then really toggling between these two pages, it shows on their exhibit that they provided, you can see through here where the buildings are proposed to be and where the existing landscape is and how much is being retained. We didn't want to go ahead and print 11 by 17 copies of this, but if video can be on the screen at the podium. There we go. So here you see the building, and then here you can see the aerial. So basically all of this vegetation is staying, not being touched. All of this area staying, not being touched. There's the wetlands in this section, so again, staying, not being touched. Wetland area that there's already lots of tree cover in through these areas, not being touched. So those are some of the highlights for why they did what they did and where they located them. And then this drawing here just shows really those residential uses that they showed on their first exhibit and the location of where the apartments are. And the main thing that staff was just, you know, I don't want to have to ask for a special study every time we have something come in, but when we got to see this and where these units are, here is the only area that I may be concerned about noise because it acts as an amplification. We have a similar setup like this out at the Parkway Place PID over on Logistics Way. They haven't gotten that fully tenanted yet, but there we did require them to put an additional berm and landscaping, but not a sound wall. But again, it depends on their tenant uses. But I think the applicant fully understands that when they know what kind of user they'll have there, they'll need to show that they can meet the noise standards. The noise standards may or may not show that they need a sound wall. Again, Prologis next door was a worst case scenario, 24/7, lots of outdoor activity. Here we've tried to limit as much outdoor activity. But the other thing I would like Planning Commission to talk about a little bit is how they feel about on the outdoor storage, temporary versus allowed anytime. Is the way that their temporary is talking about is allowing it in these truck aprons of the building. So if there were temporary storage that's there for a week and then it's gone, is that not a problem? But then if it's more permanent storage, we've suggested, they've agreed that really you wouldn't be putting it here because in most cases it wouldn't meet the standards. But that's something that we would like a little bit of direction so that legal can work through any issues, but then that way we can better understand if you have any issues or not with those. So any other further questions? Applicants available as well as staff.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Okay. Oh, yep, sorry, go ahead.
Ms. Smith, can we go back to the overlay maps of the county and the city, the future zoning maps?
Yep.
Yes, everything's closed. And what did the county currently zone or future zone, or where it income generating, and what did we say was allowed there?
So what the city said is we wanted this business innovation, which can be done through a PID, and staff's determined that we believe the PID actually meets that standard based on going over the uses at this meeting today and then meeting that one Elam Farm condition to make sure that the roadway can be on somebody else's property. But other than that, we believe that it does fall within that particular policy. That's what the city would like to see in that use. And then what the county has is this lower section already has a PUD, and that PUD already allows for a winery. So
Already allows for what?
So
A winery?
yes.
Okay.
So if they do nothing, we don't annex the property, they have the entitlements with the county to put in a winery. It's only a smaller section, but it's also the section that has really those landscaped areas in the back. And by having all of the properties, I think they're able to better keep a lot of those older wetlands and older growth areas. Whereas if it's just the PUD by itself, the likelihood of more of that landscape or wetlands going away is higher. And connectivity for us is definitely harder to get for Elam Farms Parkway.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, if anybody else got some comments, I'll let y'all go first before I make mine. All right, personally, I'm real big on transitioning, and there is absolutely no transitioning from industrial to residential here. And I've driven back, I think I've gotten a call from every single household across the street and then off Red Mile both, and very concerned about warehousing going right here on this lot. And they all understand the stuff back here for Joby Jackson, but there's nothing transitioning from industrial down to commercial, down to residential. It's just bam, boom. And we got built houses over here that are $500,000-$600,000 that didn't have industrial zoning across the street from them, and now we're going to drop a bunch of industrial buildings on them across the street. I just can't get down with that. I mean, I wouldn't want somebody to do it in front of my house. I'm not going to do it in front of somebody else's house. So I'll just tell you flat out, I'm a no. But I just don't think it's fair to the residential neighbors to just drop an industrial lot right across the street from them.
I mean, I agree. It is across the street from residential. Yeah. Anybody else have comments on that?
With that much of a wetland buffer, though?
I mean, I've driven by it right now. I mean, yeah, there's wetlands out there right now, and so, but you're going to be able to see those buildings pretty cleanly. I mean, they're not going to be hidden.
Wetlands are flat. Or
Yeah.
I'd-
Yeah, I mean, there's some trees and stuff, but it's not like these buildings are going to be like buffered out where you can't see these giant warehouses across the street from you.
Ms. Smith, as far as the storage, what would be stored? What would they be looking to store? Like trailers? I mean, I saw one of the things was like construction equipment. Okay, hey.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tom McCary. I'm a Development Director with Skinnell. So for the outdoor storage components, there's kind of two pieces. There's some uses, there's accessory outdoor storage, and then there's that temporary. Was your question specific to one of those? Or just generally speaking?
Yeah, just general. Yeah.
So the temporary, which is, I think, the one that's the most unique, we're trying to establish that mostly for the benefit of phase one, which is those two smaller buildings. Those are really more flexi type warehouses designed to have multiple smaller users that, could fit a wide array of uses. R&D, manufacturing, athletic facilities, retails that need showroom components like, tile, countertop stores, places like that. These are the uses that we think aren't going to be very heavy truck traffic to begin with. But some of those may be in situations commonly where they may need to drop a pallet of tile right outside their dock wall, and maybe it'll sit there for a couple hours or a couple days before a box truck or a flatbed comes and picks it up. So the temporary storage is really just meant to provide prospective users with some flexibility around outdoor storage. We're saying you can't do anything long term in this location. But the city isn't going to try to crack down on you if you're doing something really small and simple. And we did limit it to the concrete dock aprons, which is just the first 60 feet of the truck court immediately off of the building. So the middle, drive aisle, that 70 feet down the center of the truck court would not be eligible for any of this. It's going to be tucked up basically against the actual building itself. And then the actual outdoor storage as an accessory use, we're only proposing that to be allowed in phases 2 and 3, which are those buildings that are a little more tucked away or have screening immediately around them. And again, it would be limited to the truck court dock aprons and the trailer stalls, because we're not actually building any outdoor storage yards per se anywhere. It would just be if a user needed to put something on a paved area, they would be allowed in those areas because it's screened sufficiently.
Anything from this side of the room?
Would it be,
I did have a
sorry.
question. It looks like in phase 2, there was going to be an access road to Manchester Pike.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the city's plans to put a red light there, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
At the Elam Farms?
Yeah, at Manchester Highway right there.
Yes, the current plan is the developer will make the connection, and the city would put the red light in.
Okay.
So what would the timeline be for the connection, more or less?
It would be during their phase 2, but and that would be one of the things that I would be negotiating with them during the development agreement to make sure we have a date certain by which that connection has to be made. Because we don't want to have the plans approved and then
I know.
10 years from now.
Manchester Farms Department, they've already made the connection.
Manchester
These guys
Farms
are-
is,
Or they are going to in their
they've done a little bit of widening, like several hundred feet, I believe, of widening, but the vast bulk of that connection has not been made yet. That would be.
But that's part of their project is to tie into Manchester Highway and then
Correct.
take it to the end of their property, and then these guys would pick it up,
Yeah,
right?
so
from there.
Manchester Farms Apartments is not going all the way to the property line.
Okay.
The phase 2 of the extension of Elam Farms would go to the property line as well as into the property north.
Got it, okay.
To
Yeah,
connect
a few
to where
hundred,
the-
a few hundred feet into
Gotcha.
their property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bad luck for us on that one.
Yeah.
And just to
Understand.
clarify, though, we are processing a final plat for the Manchester Park Apartments, and they are dedicating 60 feet of right-of-way all the way from Manchester Pike all the way down to their southerly line. But because Army Corps and TDAC saw it as a city project for our benefit, they could not get the permits to get that to come further through, and that was one reason that they did not. But we will at least have the right-of-way in that section, so we'll have controlling access. And then as part of their phasing plan, they may have to, for MTE, put down some of the base rock and other things in that section. So phase 1, they'll actually get the TDAC and Army Corps permits as part of their project, which those companies, entities are much kinder to developers than they are to cities. So they'll get that with their phase 1, the approval, so we know where the alignment is, and get the alignments locked down and in place so that we at least have that capability. And then John, as he stated, will be getting into a lot of the details in the development agreement, because we are probably looking at offsetting impact fees. All of the new projects are subject to road fees. And so this, because it is a city major transportation project, is likely eligible for a lot, if not most, of their traffic ones. And here, they have agreed to, again, construct it all the way to the portions that are missing on the apartment project, as well as to the terminus currently.
Okay.
And then would it be possible for me to provide a little bit of a response to Commissioner Wright's statements, just addressing some of those concerns?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So on the topic of transitions, it was our intent to try to conform as much as possible with the proposed future use of this property as designed and implemented by the city, this business innovative zoning, which is really a quasi-industrial, quasi-commercial with an emphasis on R&D and manufacturing. So, we're already kind of limited to a very specific lane in which we can operate. But we set it up and teed up the site plan such that phase 1, which is those 2 smaller buildings that are going to be closer to the multifamily, are really designed by nature to attract users that are going to profile far less industrial. There's no trailer parking. There's far more auto parking than is traditional for bulk industrial warehousing. The users are going to will have a higher likelihood to have more office space per square foot in the building. That's where the retail users will go. That's where fitness users like a volleyball gym or a pickleball club would go. That's where the breweries would go. It's lower clear height, narrower buildings. That's flex product. So we tried to design that portion of the site, given that we have this demising roadway that we have to design around, to make it more of a transitional area. We're not asking for just general industrial zoning.
Well,
built
I'm
this
not
out.
concerned about the apartment complexes. I'm concerned with homeowners that have assets that they've bought that are now going to be across the street from an industrial building.
In the county.
Yeah, well, county, city, both. I mean, I'm respectful of my neighbors, whether they're in the county or the city. The neighborhood across the street is in the city. But, I mean, you've got 2 adjacent property owners that are in the county that are, I mean, you could probably throw a football and hit a building. So I'm concerned with people who are small, whether it be family, whatever, that own an asset that is definitely going to get devalued when you put a warehouse beside it or an industrial building beside it.
I think if it were, I understand your point. I think if it were more general industrial, perhaps, but all the facilities are designed to be smaller scale users that are just not going to be very heavy on trucks. And what most people don't like are trucks on their roads. But as I understand it, this area has a significant traffic congestion problem, which will be given an enormous amount of relief by building out this road. So that's immediate benefit for those very neighbors you're concerned about. And then the aesthetics of the building themselves, I think, you know, this is Class A institutional grade facilities. We intend for the building designs to be very aesthetically pleasing. I mean, it's not going to be the Taj Mahal, it's a concrete building, but there will be a lot of architectural elements, articulations and reveals, tricolor painting, smooth finishes, a lot of storefront glass, things that, you know, make these look like, you know, quality product. And I you know, personally don't think people drive by and say ew when they see that type of product. They say ew when they see that old, pre-engineered metal, dilapidated, dirty space, which this would not be, respectfully.
I work in it every day. So I do, I mean, when you show a house or whatever, and you have somebody that goes, oh, I got an industrial complex across the street, I'm going to mark that one down on my list of houses I want to go look at. Or I've looked at this house, oh, I've got a warehouse complex across my street. It does make a difference. It does affect resale value. It does affect the desirability of a neighborhood. So I see it every day. It's just, it is what it is. It's a controlled obsolescence.
What if we talk about the line of sight for that building 3 and building 4? Because I think, you know, building 1 and 2.
I'm only one vote. Y'all can all vote the other way.
No, I'm.
And
Yeah.
buildings 3 and 4 are the ones on the east side, right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
3 and 4 are closest to the road and the wetlands. And so, you know, maybe, because I love that the wetlands are closer to the road, but like somebody said, wetlands are flat. You know, we can't put any buffering or berm there. So what can we do to beef up the line of sight for buildings 3 and 4 so that it maybe doesn't look so obvious an industrial complex?
Can we bring back up
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
right there?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Vice Chair Averwater, you know, one thing that could be done would be putting the landscape buffer on top of an earthen berm to provide additional vertical screening.
What? Say that again?
Where?
So
Build the berm and
currently,
then putting the
currently
landscape
the
buffer on top of
option
the
that
berm.
they show here on the type E buffer that's closest to that residential that's the closest is an option 1. An option 1, I believe, is flat, doesn't have any change in grade. If they did, I believe it's option 3. Option 3 would be a 4-foot tall berm, and you would need 20 feet to transition, basically to build up that, so it would built up 4 feet tall, and then the plantings would be on top of that, so that would raise all of the plantings to not
Okay.
be at grade.
Is that what you were saying, Matthew?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about putting that in the wetland, and I was like, you're, what? Okay, so you're saying for the purple lines, it would be a 4-foot berm, a 3 or 4-foot
They
berm?
could if they did. I think it's option 3, I believe, is the one that has the 4-foot tall berm. So
Well, we
we
know-
have 3 options in this particular buffer type. 1 includes the addition of a screening wall. We've done that when you're closer in context. When you're further away in context, usually a berm might be a better choice because you're raising all of the plantings. So Prologis, before they built their 20-foot wall of China, they actually built a berm, and they built landscaping on top of that berm to also further shield the adjacent neighbors from the wall. So they ended up having the noise barrier of a wall and then a visual softening barrier of a raised berm landscaping. is usually what they did. And then in Parkway Place, in some of those areas where we had a lot of the county, and those were 5, 10, 20-acre lots, in those cases, we had some 50-foot buffers that were maintained, meaning they couldn't touch landscaping the first 50 feet of the project, and it went as high as 125 feet in some areas where industrial buildings were extremely close. So those are a couple of, and in areas like 1 and 2, I believe Parkway Place maybe put a berm in between those areas to, again, add a little bit more visual separation from adjacent residential uses. So I was hoping that you could maybe, Mr. Wright, if you can provide direction, what would make you feel like an adequate transition buffer? What would it be?
Okay, we can talk about that.
Well, before we go there, let me ask the question. Right now, we're only looking at the zoning application, correct?
What's that?
We're only looking at the zoning application.
Yeah, we already voted for annexation.
Yeah. So, looking at the zoning application, I agree with you. It's not the best looking site when you go on residential, farmland, county, city, then across the street. You got a lot of homeowners across the street, but I was more concerned about the zoning, so that we can kind of look at it to where we can kind of make it to where it's not as so industrial, maybe some buffering, some other things,
I think the issue is, Reggie, they can't put anything, they can't buffer it for this particular property because of the wetland. So it's not like they can put commercial on the front.
Right.
So you're just saying you don't like the zoning
No,
at all?
I do like the zoning. I'm
Okay.
glad we did zone.
Okay.
I do like the zoning, but I'm still more concerned with the residents across the street, the ones up the street, one down the street from this property. I just got to looking at it on the aerial map, so I'm concerned about, you going, residential, then all of a sudden you got these commercial buildings.
What were the proposed tenants for buildings 3 and 4 that you guys were looking at?
Are you talking about the land use chart or the
Yeah,
proposed tenants?
The tenants that he was referring to.
The land
You
use
went through
isn't-
1 and 2. You were looking at some
Yeah.
commercial style stuff like that, but for 3 and 4.
It's the same use table, basically, almost identical for the two. We just took out a couple uses from that Zone 1 to make it less industrial feeling. For example, like contractors storing anything outdoors, except in the limited instance of that very short term.
Opposite of what you're thinking, though. The 1 and 2.
And then we
less
carved out a lot of the
more
manufacturing.
restricted. Right. And you're more concerned that 3 and 4 are closer to the residential.
Yeah.
You need to swap.
That's actually what I was
That's
thinking.
where I was going
That's
with
next to
is
FedEx.
swapping, taking 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Uses.
And yes, and flipping that up towards the front, and then taking the stuff. I'm fine with the even some of the heavier industrial stuff, even if it has some of the outdoor storage, being by FedEx, But whenever I think of some of the industrial type looking buildings that have commercial uses, I think of the new DBAT facility, stuff like that off Emergency Boulevard. He mentioned fitness centers, gyms, and all that. I think that would almost be a better fit, closer to Manchester Pike.
Yeah.
And then if you want to take full industrial and commercial out of it, buildings 1 and 2, in my opinion, would be better suited for that.
It's a better transition.
It's a
from-
better
It is a transition,
Yeah.
because you do have FedEx right there too,
Really? Yeah, I agree with that.
How
So I
about
don't-
this as a compromise? What if we moved Building 3, which is the one that is close to Manchester Pike and is facing Manchester Pike and seems to be the area of concern? What if we move that into Zone 1 with Buildings 1 and 2? So you have the first 3 buildings having this more protected quasi-commercial status, and the one that's really tucked away in that southern corner, surrounded on 3 sides by existing woodlands, is the one that's a little bit more industrial in nature.
What do you know that we don't?
So you're saying building 3, you would flip it to the west side of the proposed Elam Farms Parkway?
No, he's just saying
In the use
implement the
table.
uses from 1 and 2 onto building 3. is
So
what
the
he's
zoning,
saying.
there's 2 zoning districts. The first is for buildings 1 and 2, and then the second is for 3 and 4. I propose we just move building 3 into that first zoning district. So you'd have that, only manufacturing if it doesn't have a negative impact on the neighbors. More of those commercial focused uses. And building 4, which is really tucked away in that corner and I don't think impacting anyone, can stay as is.
I think that's the one you're worried about.
Yeah, that's
I think
the one
opposite
closest
of
to
what
it.
you're saying, actually.
Oh, that's the one you're worried about? I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Yet, too. So, I mean, I think about what would happen, if that. if
Swap
we
the
could,
designations
Hey,
between.
Matt, can we pull up that initial drawing that they showed us of the building?
Of the architecture?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one's the closest.
Scroll
to
up.
these two.
Oh, is this the one you want?
Holly, can you?
Sorry, I don't.
So are you talking about architecture or the site plan layout?
Yeah, the architect.
I don't think we're close to being done. I don't know why you-
My computer's fully
This mouse is very touchy. So we only have 2 exhibits on the architecture. So this gives you a conceptual rendering, and basically it states ensuring proper base, body, and cap, as well as sectional spacing. And it talks about the planning commission shall have the review authority. So Parkway Place, every single building that's been in that has the same language, and it requires you all to review the design and have full weight in on it and whether you believe it meets the intent of our design guidelines.
Yeah.
So here, it just gives you a visual. We want to use concrete tilt-up.
What, did Reggie have, did you have specific questions about the architecture, Reggie?
I just wanted to see that. I mean, I think my concern is kind of like Sean's concern on just initially, it looks like we're bringing Joe B. Jackson all the way down to Manchester Pike.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out and trying to make sure we're not actually doing that. That's
We
why I
transition correctly.
Yeah, so pretty
Yeah.
simple, take the 2 buildings that you're allowing the most commercial uses in and put those next to the other big, huge commercial buildings. And then the ones that you allow less, that you're more restrictive of and you want the office, whatever, put those next to the residential.
Correct.
So,
That's
Just one
Yes,
clarification.
yes.
All the commercial uses are allowed in all these buildings. We're not trying to tell anyone, oh, you're too commercial to come here.
Right.
If anything, it's telling some of the industrial users, you're too industrial to come here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, yes, industrial.
And so, and Reggie, so when you're looking at this particular elevation, all of those dock doors, so when you're talking about Joby Jackson area, on building 4, the dock doors will all be facing the south side of the project, which is right into the Woodlands area, so those don't face any neighboring properties. But building 3, all of their dock doors face southeasterly, so those are more facing Manchester Pike. And so that's one of the reasons, that they have that requirement. And for us, if they do have any dock doors that are facing public rights of way, they're required to properly screen it. And so
Okay.
usually it's the heavy landscape buffering is what we generally see.
Ms. Smith, if I can jump in here, we're playing a little game of squirrel. So we went from berm to zoning back to architecture. So I'm going to rein it in, and we're going to talk about the zoning, and then once we can all maybe agree or not agree on zoning, we'll move to architecture and berm. Any other thoughts, concerns on the zoning itself? We were talking about maybe changing the uses of building 3, but there were concerns that maybe building 4 uses were the ones you want to change because of,
All the uses are the same.
For commercial but not industrial.
what do you want, Mr. Wright?
I told you where I was.
Okay, so I think, I mean, I do have
Office
concerns.
isn't allowed use.
Say that again?
Office isn't allowed use in our table.
Great. I
That
think
helps.
we're concerned about future maybe development, is what you're talking about, Tristan, of those adjoining properties
Yeah, I mean,
and
that
lack thereof.
Yeah, I mean, that was a concern, like, for building 4, because it is tucked away now, but it's just something.
Do we get an opportunity to review the actual,
Site
plat and
plan.
everything later? We're just doing zoning right now, right?
This is a PID. So,
That is for the,
All of the site plans would come back to the planning
This-
commission. I think.
right, the site plan will, but the PID has the uses, so that's why we want to be,
got you.
yeah. So we all were good with the uses for all 4 buildings?
Mr. Rollins, you have any insight?
Well, I really have agreed with much of everything that's been said, but I guess the first thing, this might have been something perfect to have gone before the joint conceptual workshop.
I was
and
just
got-
thinking that, Mr. Rollins.
got way ahead of this.
That should be at dinner right now.
I had spoke to Mr. Newman about that. The reason is because this has been in discussion with the city several months before the joint conceptual workshop process started. And so this would have gone to that workshop had it come in later, but we've been in discussions with the developers
Totally
since the
understand
summer, I
that.
believe.
But I guess Councilman Wright, I'm on the same page with him. You know, you're going out Manchester Pike, and it's still a beautiful drive, driving out Manchester Pike, and all of a sudden you get right there at Dilton-Mankin Road, and all of a sudden there's just these warehouses out of nowhere. And we understand why it's backed up, but, you know, there's just got to be something. If I'm a resident there, or I'm trying to sell someone a residence there, I mean, it's just something we've got to be cognizant of, that, you know, these things affect our neighbors. Even though I live on the opposite side of town, I put myself in the shoes of those people that may have lived there forever. Maybe they just moved in. And obviously, I think Councilman Wright has heard from some of those folks, and I think we just have to be very sensitive to the people we're serving.
Ms. Rollins, thank you for that. I'd usually not voice an opinion while I'm serving as chair, but I will say that I am happy with Building 1 and Building 2. I'm very thankful that you are willing to invest in the infrastructure to help our citizens move throughout the city. But the fact, berm or not, that we will see Building 3's loading docks and trailers from the road makes me not a very happy councilwoman. And Building 4, even though there is a very nice vegetative line, I do worry about the future possible development of those parcels and the possibility for them to become nice residential homes, and that future growth would likely be inhibited because of Building 4's close proximity to the property line, tree line or not. My suggestion to you is that this being, if you want to hear it or not, would be that this not get voted on tonight, and maybe you reach out to some planning commissioners and council members, and maybe we can make some changes. And
Okay.
you can,
I'm open to that. I do have an
That's good.
idea, though,
Yeah.
if I can bounce that off you, because we're all here. Regarding Building 4, the southernmost one, the concern is that the adjacent property to the east may be developed in the future, and
Sure.
those uses won't necessarily fit well with what we're doing?
Correct.
Holly, are those parcels BI as well? So it would be in fact, the same zoning as what we're doing. So
Future land use map.
that would be the same use.
future land use map has it as BI.
Yeah.
It's all BI in the future.
Well, we change that all the time, so doesn't mean much, to be honest.
Okay.
But we all agree
And-
here that this is not a good transition plan.
Yeah.
And the reason we
future land
changed
use map
that
is
is
on there.
3 is the one.
Yeah.
What, Mr. Wright?
We all agree here, and we have 2 council people sitting here, and we talk about future land use plans and how they're supposed to transition and be good. This does not transition whatsoever. And we, at one of our first joint conceptual workshops, we had a future land use map property that was multifamily on one road, and the adjacent properties were single-family. The future land use map may just not work right here because there's no transition. So it's nothing that it's not that the future land use map is wrong or incorrect, but you've got to have transition from land type to land type, and it's just not here.
And Councilman Wright, I think we talked about this at last meeting or maybe a couple ago. I mean, if we pass this, I don't see this passing the city council. I really don't. I don't have any idea. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think we've got to put a little smoke back in the cigar or toothpaste in the tube here. There's no need for us to pass it and get the city council and not pass. I mean, I think we owe it to you to, when it passes us, it needs to move on through the city council, and I just don't think it's going to. That's my take.
And we know you don't have support of at least one.
Yeah, you're one down already, so.
And just for general knowledge, one of the reasons this went BI when you all changed the land use is across the street, Swanson's going to be developing 150 acres, all industrial, in the county.
Well, he'll have to go through Mr. Wright for that.
They've already got their
Oh, they're-
approvals.
No, in the county.
Oh, in the county, that's right.
Because So that's one of the reasons why this went BI at one time. This was actually looking at residential all the way down this corridor, but because of some of those other heavier movements that are outside of the city's control, that was one of the reasons that the land use map, before it was adopted, looked further into this area and did BI all the way through. And the reason I'm concerned is, not concerned, we have another property, very large size, probably right about down here, that would tie into the backside of, I want to say it's industrial, I'm trying to think of the name.
I would suggest that one go to the joint conceptual workshop before it comes to planning commission.
Because that one is also BI, so definitely we will bring that one, but there was some logic.
I think I was stated very clearly, but I've heard from multiple other planning commissioners, I think there definitely needs to be some transition in place for even this body to vote on it, let alone the city council to vote on it.
I will ask the applicant, would you like me to call a vote? Or would you like to defer?
Yeah, I'm feeling super confident about it. Let's go for it.
We appreciate your professionalism tonight, though. Thank you.
Sorry, we kinda-
I did want to share my idea though, which is just, it's transitions, it's sight lines. We have several hundred feet between Building 3 and Manchester Pike. So, there is that transitional area that's just open green space. There's some wooded area. If it's a matter of beefing up the screening at Building 3's truck court, we have that proposed type E buffer. If we need to throw a 6-foot berm underneath that to increase its height, to improve the screening, we're open to that. So if it's a matter of, diving into the details of what that screening looks like at Building 3, that is a discussion we're very willing and ready to have. For Building 4, if it's that the neighboring parcels may be later developed and not synchronized well, if the concerns aren't addressed by the fact that they'll have to go through the BI zoning process as well, we'd be open to also looking at additional buffering at that eastern property line next to Building 4. It may be something along the lines of if the neighboring parcel is developed at a later date, and if that use is not BI, industrial, commercial, somewhere in that area, if it ends up being multifamily, for example, then, a retroactive condition may kick in that would require us to beef up our buffering a little bit.
I think as you're looking at deferral, you may want to look at usages for the 4 buildings and maybe take some of your heavier uses out of the front couple buildings and
Instead
push
of having the same uses for
Yeah,
all.
instead of having the same uses for all, limit the front 2 buildings that are closest to 41 to a lot lighter uses and move your heavier uses in the back and maybe be all inclusive on the front to the furthest back to FedEx. But the closer you get to the residential in 41, the less industrial uses you have on your list.
You want them to use this property to make the transition.
Right, correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could really care less about building 1 and 2 being heavy industrial.
Yeah, I mean,
Same.
That's right. They're
I
right
really
next.
don't care as far as how heavy
The,
it go.
the rationale for the use table, because I worked with the applicant on these uses, was buildings 1 and 2 are the closest proximity to those apartment buildings. And so we limited the uses to the less particularly noise-producing uses in buildings 1 and 2. But if the direction for the planning commission is that our primary concern is buildings 3 and 4, then I suppose we certainly could flip that use table essentially.
I think I would look at all of that.
Fair enough.
If I'm hearing everybody up here correctly, I think I would take a look at all of it.
Okay.
I'm definitely
Swapping?
not opposed to something going here.
Yeah,
I
I-
understand you can't put commercial along Manchester Highway as much as I would love for that to happen because of the wetlands. But, so I mean, I understand something has to go here, but I do just,
Reggie, is that where you were getting to with architecture? Is the view from Manchester?
Yeah, so I'm good with them wanting to put a much larger berm. I'm good with that. We can't control what the county's doing. We can only control what's in front of us. And I'm good with the commercial uses. I just didn't want to see, it looks like all the commercial from Joby Jackson just came right onto 41.
Because as the crow flies, it kind of is.
Right.
Right?
well, that's what's happening
Right.
when this opens up.
It's facing the wrong direction, so.
But if we can if we can put,
That's true.
put, extra, berms and make it look like, and try to hide as much as possible.
Sure.
I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
Or really dress up the buildings that are face 41,
Right.
where they don't just look like.
I'm good with that.
And I don't know that you can build a berm big enough to hide that building,
Well,
which is where we were coming.
I'm asking Mr. Blomley to pull up Google Earth, and I want to see this tree line right in the middle of the wetland to remain, just how tall those trees are and what's existing there now, what it currently blocks.
50-foot tall building.
While Mr. Blomley does that,
It's 50 feet tall.
while Mr. Blomley does that, I think it might be worth consideration by the commission.
Yes.
Holly mentioned one of the reasons for the docks facing Manchester Pike was because of our street design guidelines that require extra buffering along the road. Because this is a PID, I believe the commission could deviate from those guidelines if you wanted to and have the docks facing the Elam Farm extension.
How'd you know I was going to ask that?
That would be great.
That would be something that the commission could consider, because this is a PID. So essentially flip the building so you have the frontage along.
We'll flip number 3 for sure.
Great. I'm going to put that as a check mark.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so
Flip it number 3.
are you going to defer it yourself, or do we need to make a motion to defer?
No,
I think it's best if the applicant requests deferral, because there is a bit of a shot clock once they apply. So if the applicant requests.
I gracefully request a referral.
And that is granted. That warranted this.
All right, so I'm going to
Congratulations.
Good work
His
session.
motion to defer.
Yes.
No,
Second.
we don't have to do anything.
We still have to vote, right?
No.
Yes, motion.
I believe that even though the applicant requested it, because it's been put before the commission, you could decide not to do what the applicant wants.
Right.
So doing a motion, a second, and vote would probably be the best.
Yeah, that's
We need a vote.
I stand corrected. I will accept a motion and a second for his willingness to defer. Someone.
Call the roll.
No, I need a motion.
Oh, I already made the
There needs
motion.
to be a
Great.
motion and a second.
Calling the roll then.
Okay.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Prince.
Aye.
Mr. Rollins.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Vice Chair Overwater.
Aye.
Thank you,
All
Matt.
right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you mean that? I'm just kidding. All right. I believe that was the last of our public hearings. Staff reports and other business.
Just an update. If you'll recall at the last day meeting, there was an application on Brinkley Road, a rezoning application. Just to give everybody an update, that applicant has withdrawn his rezoning request. So it was scheduled for March 11th, but we will not be holding that public hearing because it has been withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr. Blomley.
So are we canceling March 11th, or there's still more?
No, we already have an annexation public hearing on March the 11th, and we've got a couple other items at our day meeting on the 18th of this month to schedule for public hearings that evening as well.
That is great. Thank you, Mr. Blomley. Any other business?
No, ma'am.
All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you, Planning Commission.